Chapter 41. Vlad stalked down the corridor with a spring in his step. A chuckle danced on his lips. His plan, teetering on a precipice, was finally solidifying. With the four known thin spots now, thanks to the intruders, it was only an hour to his targets. And his sorcerers had learned to direct them to other destinations on Earth. They could go where they pleased, and because of the elf they were using, Indeliria's magical defenses were no challenge. At least here everything was in its normal color, so far as he defined the concept for himself. He didn't strain his eyes, and it was hard to recall a time when those harsh hues of Earth had been considered natural. He pushed open a door into an austere room with a single chair in its center. The space was lit by a magical lantern high in a corner. In the chair sat a Kelin wearing an elven-style shirt and trousers. The soldier looked up expectantly. "Yes, my Lord Commander?" he asked in the Kelin language. He held his hands at his sides. Vlad opened his mouth, but then frowned. Thistle spoke first. "Has my mission been successful, my lord?" "Your mission?" the commander repeated. "Did King Dis not inform you?" Thistle inquired. "This mission has been a long time in process, to earn our enemy's trust." "Perhaps," Vlad managed, staring at the other Kelin. "I have confirmation that the princes and the wicked baroness are in Elwyn." Thistle folded his hands together. "I don't know how long they'll remain there, however." Yes, excellent." He lifted onto the balls of his feet. "All three targets are in the same place, so you tell me as well." "Yes, my lord," Thistle replied. "This mission..." He looked Thistle up and down. "How did you accomplish such a feat? They knew your face, your eyes, and yet they still followed you?" Thistle stared ahead. "I pretended to have escaped the banishment, my lord. That I had been on my own since the old war, and thus had learned different customs." "Ah." Vlad nodded. "And they believed you?" Thistle nodded. "Of course, my lord." A grin crawled across the Kelin commander's countenance. It was all coming together. 3 distinct individual sources had told him that his targets were there. The human prisoner, their spy, and now this Kelin. A thought brought the commander's heels back down to the ground like a falling boulder. "What about the child? The half-breed bastard?" Thistle's face remained blank. "Per the king's orders, the child was an experiment, to see if we could gain elvish healing ability." Vlad blinked. "Impressive." His frown deepened. "Did it work?" Thistle shrugged. "We were waiting for him to mature further." "How was this child made?" "What do you mean, my lord?" Vlad licked his lips. "You did not mate?" Thistle sneered. "Couldn't stomach it, so I used alternative methods." The commander bit off a chuckle rattling in his throat. Good. Present the boy for dissection and study wherever you stashed him." Thistle bowed his head. "At once, my lord." He tensed as if to rise, but remained seated. "I am unworthy of this request, my lord, but I would like a bath and a change of clothes. I wish not to smell like this anymore." Vlad nodded. "Naturally. I am sure you will want to join us for the final battle." "Wouldn't miss it, my lord." Thistle looked at the sword on the commander's hip. "It's good to see it again. I remember the first one and its wielder well." Vlad placed his hand on the pommel. "I am the wielder now." Then a grin slinked across his lips. "We are in reach of victory. After so long, we are in reach." Thistle nodded, still eyeing the sword. "Yes, in reach. I have duties to attend." Vlad spun on his heel toward the door. When he was in the doorframe, he paused, dropped his head, and turned back around. Thistle maintained a helpful expression. "Is there something more, Commander?" The other Kelin startled. "What? Commander?" He swept into the room.
It is I, Dis, your king!
Thistle's jaw fell open. He ducked his face, staring hard at the floor.
Yes, my king. Why would you... How could you confuse your king?
He blinked rapidly.
I am sorry, you have the commander's sword.
Dis looked down.
Oh.
Bewilderment swirled across his features.
Why?
He shook his head.
Stupid replica, anyway. I didn't notice. I never draw my own sword. Don't have to.
Thistle kept staring.
Yes, my king.
Dis pulled it out and swung it around. The sound vanished from the room. The king stopped moving the weapon.
Damned annoying thing, really. I wonder why he gave it to me. He's always drooling over it.
Thistle pushed himself off the chair and dropped to one knee.
I shall return it if you like. That way my king need not bother with it. Who are you anyway, Toady?
Dis frowned.
And why are you dressed like an elf? I was a spy, my king. I brought you the prisoners. Ah, yes, of course. Now I must return to Earth for our hour of victory.
Dis unbuckled and removed the belt, sheathed the sword, and tossed it to Thistle.
Get that back to your commander and go and change your clothes.
Dis gazed into the obsidian mirror. He'd brought it back with him to his personal apartments so it could be surrounded by his fountains, couches, and beds. The mirror had been a gift. It had been a gift from... He frowned into his reflection. From whom? It had always been his as long as he could recall, but he also knew that it had been a gift. He turned around, but it was Vlad who gazed at the room. His smile spread. Their army, though scattered across the elven kingdom, had begun pooling together, and, like a flood, they would wash away the last leadership of the elves. Their vengeance was almost in his hand. Dis suddenly whispered over his shoulder,
"What's got you so teary-eyed, brother?"
Vlad whirled around and glared at the king in the mirror.
"Victory, this." "Yes. After this, after we've won, I will finally find peace."
Vlad snorted, but then swallowed a chuckle.
"With this sword."
Dis's reflection pointed.
"What sword?"
Vlad's hand dropped to his hip, and he bit his tongue.
"Where is it?"
He pawed at his clothes.
"Where is it?"
The king shrugged.
"I don't know. Who would dare?"
This time it was Dis who chuckled.
"Perhaps that bull-headed girl locked away in the prison with the others. This isn't the time to jest, Dis."
Vlad stomped in a tight circle.
"That sword was part of my plan. It was stupid. It wasn't even a real blade."
The Kelin king grinned.
"Oh, and I'd lied. One of your spies has it. Giving it to him was essential to gain information about you and us."
Vlad gasped so hard he choked. He leaned forward, spewing coughs. Dis recovered from his coughing as well.
"I can't believe you!" the commander screamed. "It is my sword. I made it. They remember the horror. It was mine, Dis."
He slapped his fist against the mirror, and the king reeled. Vlad didn't see himself also reeling. The commander smashed his fist against the wall. Dis hissed, holding his bleeding knuckles in front of him.
"I do not care about the pains you inflict upon yourself, but not on me." "The same pains,"
Vlad sneered. He remembered holding in his guts and heaving in the closing battle of the last war. He'd rolled over to see Dis face down in the mud beside him. But then, when he'd woken up, his soldiers had informed him that the other Kelin had linked their lives because their bodies had been failing, and the Kelin couldn't lose their leaders. They'd been told they shared the same water of life, but nothing about sharing the same body. Dis had never been far from that day on. Vlad bit his tongue until the metallic taste of blood filled his mouth. He whirled and spat at the king's feet in the mirror. Dis raised his hand to his own bloody teeth.
"How dare you harm your king?"
Vlad stopped and stared at the king. A knock thundered at the entry to the chamber. What? Dis snapped, loud enough to be heard through the door.
The prisoners have escaped, my king, my commander.
Vlade snarled.
Enemies loose in our city.
But Dis smiled and spoke with soothing poison on his lips.
They will not survive. This is our world. Your ethic still has a pulse, Vlade. Pull our army to Moonrise Castle. You can witness their agony in the glory of color. It has been too long since I have seen men die in red blood. If there are outsiders in our city, do not fret. Let our world eat them.